Joe and Mika are really upset. I mean, how dare Elon Musk and JD Vance make the government efficient? It's not what we want. We'll show you all of the delicious rage in just a few moments. Also, Margaret Brennan. Remember her? She was the big new host of Face the Nation, and she's been reduced to nothing but a resistant marcher in the streets trying to push back against everything Trump. It makes for a bad show, but it makes for really hilarious clips that we'll show you. Also, Stephen Miller, absolutely on fire. He's the best spokesperson for this White House, other than Donald Trump himself, of course. And we've got new polling for Donald Trump, and shocking, CNN can't believe it. Again, he's very, very popular. And do you feel a vibe shift? Well, if you were watching the Super Bowl last night, you definitely saw a vibe shift. America's back, and it's okay to say it. We don't have to apologize for being patriotic anymore, and it's nice. We're going to show you some of the ads that embraced the new patriotism coming up right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. We're back in our studios, back home in D.C., where we belong. Thanks for watching us. Thanks for streaming live. And Kevin McMahon's greatest nightmare, I've got my book in my hand at all times, so I can just flash it. Buy my book. Don't have to worry about the graphic anymore. Makes me happy. Have you seen the news from economists forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by the year 2030? See, we've got this perfect storm brewing. Congress is going to try to do something about it, but it's going to be hard. See, we got Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point. We got the largest generation hitting retirement. We got a smaller workforce, which means smaller tax funds funding those programs, and then a growing national debt, rising cost of living. We have a problem right now. So what are you going to do about it? Well, you can do something to protect your own family's future. Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times. And Birch Gold, well, they make it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into actual physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an IRA, an existing IRA you've already got, or a 401k you've already got, into an IRA in physical gold. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text Larry to 989898. My name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold, and you'll get a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, only information. Text my name, Larry, to number 989898. Do it today. Well, this morning, if you were watching MSNBC, you saw, I'm sorry, you weren't watching MSNBC. Give you a break. Nobody was. But if by happenstance you couldn't find your remote control and your liberal babysitter left the channel on MSNBC, you saw Joe and Mika very, very, very angry. I mean, just look at her. She's, yikes. Mika, what's going on, man? Is Joe that bad? Yeah, he probably is. You'd look like that if you were married to Joe Scarborough. Here's what Mika had to say about the Trump administration's efforts to make our government efficient.
Elon Musk and Doge. Musk slammed the judge, calling him corrupt and writing on social media that he needs to be impeached. He even floated a new idea that the quote, worst 1% of appointed judges should be fired every year. That post has received almost 300,000 likes. Vice President JD Vance also chimed in on social media. The Yale Law School graduate argued, quote, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. And Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who also went to law school, posted about the decision multiple times from his personal account. He wrote that he agreed with the vice president's position, calling it 100% accurate. He also called the ruling a judicial coup. So, Joe, there does seem to be kind of a lead up to something majorly unprecedented. All
right, hold on. We're going to continue, but I just need to jump in here and point out, first off, they're outraged that, what was it JD Vance said, that a judge can't infringe on an executive's, on the executive branch's legitimate power. and that upsets them. No, that's 100%. Of course, it's 100% true. Mike Lee, he also has a law degree. These two, by the way, I don't believe do have a law degree, but they're absolutely outraged. And by the way, weren't they just supporting the president and the presidential candidate and the party that wanted to completely upend the Supreme Court, pack it with a bunch of his own appointees, change the number of people on the bench, be able to impeach Supreme Court justices, have term limits on Supreme Court justices? They were great with that, but now they're outraged that the sitting vice president is pushing back on a lower federal judge and Obama appointees' total infringement on the power of the executive branch. What other thing? Didn't Joe Biden just brag that he circumvented a Supreme Court decision about relieving student loan debt? Remember? He was on the campaign trail back when he had a campaign saying, even the Supreme Court said I couldn't relieve student loan debt, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And they loved him for it. And now they're upset about a constitutional crisis that the vice president is criticizing a federal judge's decision. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there for context. You have the context. Now take it away, morning joke.
And that will require a lot of questions as to what the next step is. But let's keep it right here for now.
The tweet, though, was circular.
I know.
It made no sense. And it made no sense because the legitimate powers of the president of the United States is not determined by the president of the United States or the vice president of the. Take that down.
Well,
vice president of the United States. No. Listen to me. Listen. You need to understand. Everybody needs to understand in reading this. It is the Supreme Court of the United States who determines what the legitimate power of the president is, of the vice president is, of what Congress is. That is the way it has been since John Marshall was the first Supreme Court justice.
All right, I hate to jump in again, but I just know that you're smart enough to know this, but I just want to reiterate that it's not true that the Supreme Court determines the legitimate power of the executive branch. You know the real answer. The Constitution determines the legitimate power of the executive branch. Now, we've had presidents who have overstepped the legitimate powers of the executive branch, and at times it takes the Supreme Court to determine one way or the other if they have overstepped the executive powers and the legitimate powers of the executive branch. For instance, when Joe Biden just unilaterally, outside of the confines of law, forgave student loan debt for tens of thousands of Americans. That's when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that because the Constitution says you can. Not because the Supreme Court says you can't, because the Constitution says you can't. But the way Joe Scarborough is saying, it's the Supreme Court that has final veto power over all of these things. And well, that's just not true. You know, I hate to break it to you, Joe Scarborough, but sometimes the Supreme Court can be wrong. For instance, they were wrong when they determined Roe v. Wade. Thankfully, it took 50 years, but it was reversed. You're not telling me you think the Supreme Court is always right about these things, do you? Did you support the Dred Scott decision? Do you think the Supreme Court was correct in the Dred Scott decision, Joe Scarborough? I didn't think so. No, the Supreme Court doesn't determine these things. The Constitution determines these things, and sometimes judges, all the way up to Supreme Court justices, get it wrong. I just wanted, again, a little more context. All right, take it back, Joe.
This is trolling. And I will say, and we will give examples for Mike Lee, who also went to law school, to say this is a, quote, judicial coup. This is all planned. They decided they were going to do these things that pushed the boundary of the law, that went over the line. This is all planned. Because let me tell you something. Again, we're going to show you a list of presidential actions that were enjoined, stopped, overturned during the Biden administration. And we could go back and do the same thing during the Bush administration, during the Clinton administration. This is how things are. So when you say a court cannot stop a president from doing what it's in its legitimate power to do, well, yes, of course that's true. But it is the court that determines the contours of that power. It's that simple. Let's bring it around. Conservative attorney George Conway. George.
No, he didn't do that. Oh, Kevin said I had to let this clip run all the way to the end because I was going to. Did he really just introduce George Conway as conservative attorney? George Conway. And look at him. Even George can't believe it. Wait a minute. Something got messed up on my intro. I'm not conservative. It's me, George Conway. Oh, that's delicious. That's absolutely delicious. Also, by the way, Joe Scarborough letting all 12 of his viewers know that this was all planned. This is all part of the grand strategy to circumvent the Constitution and create a dictatorship. This was all planned in advance because, after all, when have Joe and Mika ever been wrong about anything that Donald Trump does, right? So I'm sorry, what? Oh, they're always wrong about? Oh, okay. All right. Never mind. Maybe this wasn't always planned. All right. So JD Vance, he tweets out about this. This all started with a tweet from JD Vance, as you saw. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. I think everybody knows that, right? If a judge tried to command the attorney general in how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, or prosecutress in this case, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Then the key word there is legitimate. And no, it's not up to the judge to decide what's legitimate, what's not. It's in the Constitution. It's up to the judge to misinterpret the Constitution, perhaps. And Lord knows we've seen that over the years. So Adam Schiff, the freshman senator from California, decides to reply. Yes, that Adam Schiff, the one who consistently lied in Congress and on television about Russian collusion and still hasn't faced any penalty for it. JD, we both went to law school, but we don't have to be lawyers to know what ignoring court decisions we don't like puts on a dangerous path to lawlessness. We just have to swear an oath to the Constitution and mean it. Boy, I'm sorry. That is just dripping with hypocrisy and double standards. And, well, it's Adam Schiff. I guess we all expected that. Well, and then here's my favorite part of this entire chain. Town Hall's very own Kurt Schlichter, and one of my best buddies. He wrote the foreword to my book, by the way, Shameless Liars, about the media. He wrote the foreword. You should get the book. What if the judicial decision is lawless? Kurt asks Adam Schiff. A key component of the constitutional framework. By the way, Kurt also has a law degree. Thank you very much. He's been a practicing lawyer for the last 30 years. A key component of the constitutional framework is judicial modesty, which is backed up by the fact that the judiciary has nothing to compel obedience except its credibility. See, I'm a lawyer too, but the difference, Adam, is that I'm a good one. By the way, my favorite part about this Kurt Schlichter response is that got retweeted by the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, as if Schlichter needed a bigger head or a bigger ego at this point. But he's absolutely dead on right about this. That didn't stop really brilliant lawyers like Jamie Raskin from chiming in. This is all they've been talking about on MSNBC. It's like nothing else has happened in the world, which is fine, by the way. When Joe Scarborough says this is all part of the plan, I will concede this much. It is a little bit a part of the plan that the Trump administration puts little things out there to distract idiots like Joe Scarborough. So they focus on that while real work is being done over here. So you got to hand it to them. It's brilliant. Here's Jamie Raskin chiming in.
I've been at rallies all week because, a rally a day keeps the fascists away. But it was bugging me that these guys, Elon Musk's, midnight fascist crew of teenagers and 20-somethings have been able to access everybody's computer data in the country. And that's why a lot of the courts are getting involved. Could there be a nationwide class action lawsuit to follow up on last week's victories against Musk, against the Trump administration, for this breach in computer security and the data of all American taxpayers? It could be a class action suit on behalf of all Americans. If the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers want to opt out and they don't want their part of the money for the contamination of their data, fine, they can opt out. But really, it's a suit on behalf of everybody because that's our information. It doesn't belong to Elon Musk or his little midnight crew. It belongs to the people, and the government has to hold it in trust. Now, there's specific statutes which say that information can only be accessed for tax purposes, for the purposes of the Internal Revenue System, and for no other purposes. What are they using that information for?
Yeah, Michael Steele, former chairman of the RNC, really intrigued by the idea of a class action lawsuit. After all, he's just making MSNBC money, so maybe he can wet his beak as well. This is desperation. What did he call them? The Midnight Crew, Elon Musk's Midnight Crew. What a pathetic fool this man is. Yes, we need a class action lawsuit, and we'll sue Elon Musk personally and take all of his billions and divide it up amongst all Americans, because never let a socialist commie like Jamie Raskin ever set aside his redistribution of wealth mythology when it comes to any sort of government action. So that's how they're going to get Elon Musk. And of course, the birth of the new lawfare movement. They've got nothing. They're desperate. They're scrambling. This is the best he could come up with. It's amazing to me. You know, all of our personal data was accessed and hacked into during the Biden administration by the Chinese Communist Party. Did you know that? Oh, yes, it happened. Go ahead and Google it. Did you see Jamie Raskin upset about that? Did you hear Jamie Raskin say anything about commies in Beijing accessing your personal information through the government system when they hacked in? No, not a damn thing you didn't hear. But he's really upset that Elon Musk and American employees of the federal government at the direction of the president accessing payment systems to make our government less corrupt and more efficient. Let me explain what they're doing here. They go in and they access the payment systems and the personnel systems because they want to know the organizational structure of every agency, who works for who makes decisions, and where the money is going. That's how you fix corruption in an agency. And they're not sitting there asking people, oh, so what's your job here? Explain to me, show me on the organizational chart where you sit. No, they're going in and they're looking at it and they're quickly figuring out exactly where all the bodies are buried. And that's why they're panicking right now. And they're lying to you. They're lying to you that your security was breached in some way by these people. It's an absolute, total fraudulent lie. But we'll let Donald Trump, the guy who's actually in charge of all of this, we'll let him have the final word. As he was soaring over the Gulf of America on his way to the Super Bowl, he did another one of those impromptu press conferences, this time in the Air Force One version of the Oval Office, had all the reporters who were on the plane come on up from the back. I don't think they ever got to do this during Joe Biden's presidency, mostly because Jill was sitting in that chair doing the work while Joe was sleeping in the room next door. Here's what the president had to say.
A couple of court losses, Mr. President, and JD Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive power. What's your take on that?
Well, we're going to see what happens. We have a long way to go, and we're talking about fraud, waste, abuse. And when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling. But we have a long way to go. We have to find all of the fraud that's going on. We have tremendous fraud, tremendous waste, and tremendous abuse, and theft, by the way. And the day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, it is a disgrace, and it is a constitutional crisis when the judicial branch tries to infringe on the executive branch in the way that they did right now. Joe and Mika are right. This is definitely unprecedented, and it's a constitutional crisis, but not in the way they think. JD Vance posting something on X, the Everything app, about his displeasure with this federal judge's decision. That's not a constitutional crisis. A sitting judge, an Obama appointee somewhere in New York, where he was shopped for so that they could get the decision that they wanted. Him putting a halt to the executive branch's efforts to root out corruption, and even barring the Secretary of the Treasury from seeing the Treasury Department's payment systems. That's a constitutional crisis. That's the judicial branch through one judge infringing on the executive branch at almost the highest levels. And that's got to stop. Trump knows it. You know it. Everybody knows it. And it'll be resolved very soon. I hope the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, is paying attention because he knows better. I know he knows better. I think that segment went well. In fact, I'm going to reward myself by telling you to buy my book, Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. It's available on Amazon right now. It's beautiful, isn't it? Margaret Brennan recently became the anchor of Face the Nation, that CBS News' Sunday show. Now, not only are Sunday shows becoming more and more irrelevant because they're sort of scripted Potemkin Village attempts to tell the American people what's going on in politics. You got to wait once a Sunday to see it. It's an hour long. You've got politicians on there. They never answer the questions directly. They just sort of dodge and pivot, and then they have a roundtable to discuss the interview they just had. And the roundtable is basically completely populated by left-wing Democrats who hate Trump, and usually just one Republican who also hates Trump. A perfect example over on ABC on This Week with George Snuffleupagus. Their Republican that they have to comment is Chris Christie. Chris Christie. Maybe sometimes they'll swap him out with Bill Kristol. You get what I'm saying. They're terrible shows. But Margaret Brennan, when she became the host of Face the Nation, this was her chance to build her career into something huge. Maybe she'll even be the anchor of CBS Evening News at some point. She was a rising star. But then Trump happened. The Trump campaign happened. And, well, she couldn't handle it. She's been reduced down to this withering little Trump-hating meme that does nothing but attempt to fact check the person that she's talking to if it's a Republican, and her fact checks are almost always wrong. You'll remember she tried to do this to JD Vance during the vice presidential debate, and she was humiliated. Well, she tried it again this Sunday. Take a look at this extraordinarily stupid moment.
Appropriator, I've asked them to be very clear about, for example, their role funding Hamas in Gaza. They would not comply. They will not tell us what they do. Now that we start to find out some of the programs that AID has been funding, if you think about it, sex change operations in Guatemala, LGBTQ programs in Serbia.
The U.S.
This is
government
ridiculous.
does not
This is
fund
so beyond
sex
the pale.
change operations or fund Hamas. You know that, though. But you sit on.
That is not true, Margaret. I couldn't get the Secretary of State. I asked him 3 times to tell me that we were not funding Hamas through AID. He couldn't do it. And frankly, what we found is that we've been funding as American
that the United
taxpayers
States
organizations.
government is funding a terrorist group?
Certainly, the funds that have gone to UNRWA. You saw the UNRWA members who were also
UNRWA is not a
Hamas members
terrorist
doing
group.
an attack on.
UNRWA is part of the United
UNRWA
Nations.
is supporting terrorist groups. And if you look at what UNRWA has done, it's been so counter to our national interest. It's unbelievable that we would fund it.
Yeah, this is classic Margaret Brennan. In fact, let's go to the moment where she attempts to fact check Haggerty here, because it's one of the pet peeves that I hate the most about these stuck-up, arrogant, snot-nosed, DC-based political reporters and teleprompter readers. She's looking over her notes there as if she has notes to look over because she's a serious journalist. She's a teleprompter reader with a really good haircut and a nice makeup job. Take a listen to how she does this.
LGBTQ programs in Serbia.
The U.S.
This is
government
ridiculous.
does not
This is
fund
so beyond the
sex
pale.
change operations or fund Hamas. You know that, though.
That's it right there. That drives me insane. You know that, though. You already know that. You're smarter than this, Mr. Senator. You know that, Senator Haggerty, but you're just saying it because Trump made you say it. You're lying, and you know you're lying, but I'm going to call you out. So hold on a minute. The U.S. government doesn't fund Hamas. You heard Haggerty make the point. We fund UNRWA, and even the United Nations had to expel people from UNRWA because they caught them red-handed helping Hamas as part of the Hamas network. And by the way, under Joe Biden, we funded the government in Gaza. Who is the government in Gaza? Hamas is the government in Gaza. Trump cut off that funding. Biden reinstated that funding. We 100% have been funding them. And she was reduced to this ridiculous. And the look on the face as she's doing this fact, oh, I'm so sick and tired of you people coming on my show and making Democrats look bad. How am I going to get invited to the next dinner party here in town if I don't push back on you? We can't allow our viewers to hear such a thing, that the U.S. government funds Hamas. 100%. By the way, we also fund Iran, who funded Hamas, and Hezbollah. And where is this fact-checking whenever she's got a Democrat on her show? Let's move on, because then she did another very, very serious interview. You can tell it's serious because she's wearing earth tones. And they wanted to make sure that the makeup looked very serious and despairing. This is an interview with someone they cloaked in anonymity. Very important to protect this person's identity, lest they be abused and in some way maligned. Who is the person that must be protected at all costs? Who is this very, very serious interview with this victim? A federal bureaucrat who works for USAID. The reason we're protecting her anonymity is so that she can get another job in the bureaucracy to screw with the Trump administration. Watch this nightmare referred to as journalism over on CBS News.
Why in our conversation do you think you need to remain anonymous?
It has been a very hard week. Personally, professionally, as I said, I live in Washington, D.C. Many of my colleagues work in this field. Starting from January 21st, so the first day of the new administration, things started to go sideways very quickly. The atmosphere of fear that was in the USA building, which we're no longer in, the atmosphere of fear in terms of not knowing who was in the building, not knowing what their motivations were, not knowing if our emails or channels were safe, not knowing how to interpret these executive orders, right, around DEIA or administration priorities. All of that created an atmosphere of massive insecurity.
An atmosphere of fear and massive insecurity because people from the executive branch were actually overseeing what we were doing and actually holding us accountable for our actions and even our communications with people. We're so afraid we don't know how to interpret these executive orders. We're concerned that we might lose our job. Where have these people been since the pandemic when millions and millions and tens of millions of Americans had to live in an atmosphere of fear and intimidation and uncertainty because their jobs were ripped from them at a moment's notice? This is pathetic. And CBS News is buying into this and actually feeding into this atmosphere that this person is somehow a victim and can't possibly show their face around Washington, D.C. because of the intimidation. This guy, dude or madam, whatever, it sounds like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. He rubs the lotion on its skin. Get a real job. That's my advice to you. I'm sorry, I hate to be unfeeling. Get a real job. Your entire agency had 14,000 people working in it. Marco Rubio is now in charge of it. He says he needs less than 300 to do the same job. You had an atmosphere of fear and intimidation because you were afraid that people were looking over your shoulder and you were going to get fired. Good. Everyone who works for the government should feel that way. Welcome to the real world. Every single person working in the American economy for a corporation or even a small business, we have that same fear. Because if you don't do a good job and you're not actually getting it done, you will be fired. Or because of heavy government regulations, boy, that's the ultimate person looking over your shoulder, isn't it? High taxation and government regulation, and it makes it impossible for you to work and perform in this environment, in this economy. You're done. Your business goes belly up because of the government and what they're forcing you to do. Because of you, because of the people that put you in power. This is pathetic. But Margaret Brennan, she treats this person like it's some sort of a victim from sexual assault or something. You know, someone who had to change their clothes in a locker room next to a biological man pretending to be a woman. Although Margaret Brennan would actually treat the biological man as the victim in that case. We'll watch the rest of it.
And so people have, I think, lost the ability to know what's true from what's not at this point. Everyone is really scared. And so, you know, I have a daughter. I have a family like most Americans, and I want to be brave. I think it's really important to share our personal stories at this time, but I am afraid, and I just don't want to put them at any more risk than I have to.
When you say doxed, there's fear of public sharing of your name and possibly targeting.
Absolutely.
By who?
Well, I mean, at this point, Doge members, including Elon Musk, have access to not just the data within the USAID world, right, and the USAID system, which includes my personal email address, my social security number, my entire security file. In that security file is every contact I've ever known, every country I've traveled to, every home address I've had. So no matter which way I look at it, my information is entirely compromised, and it's in hands that I don't know and don't trust. And yes, the government can be slow. It can be inefficient. It can cost taxpayers money. I do not doubt that at all. What is absolutely clear to me is that the methods being used to achieve this so-called efficiency, not only do they not seem to be vetted and approved by the President of the United States or our Secretary Marco Rubio, they're entirely the actions of a rogue few individuals. They're dangerous, they're illegal, they're cruel more than anything. And so, no, I don't think this is serving American interests or answering to the president's mandate. And so to have this sort of, to be vilified by a billionaire who has decided that he is unilaterally going to take help away from the poorest people in the world, and he's doing it on behalf of the American people, is particularly gross and horrifying. And I am angry, I am sad, I am devastated for my colleagues, for myself, for my family, and for the American people.
Honestly, I
Why?
don't want this person working for the federal government in any capacity if they're this big of a snowflake and they're this fragile and they're this terrified by something like this. And I'm sorry, don't you have to have a college education to have a job like this? I assume so, because, you know, this is USAID. They're the elite of the elites. So the best word he can come up with, or she can come up with, is gross to describe what Elon Musk is doing. And by the way, where was Margaret Brennan's fact check? You know how she did to the senator just a moment ago when he said that Elon Musk and his team is doing this without the approval and consent of the president or the Secretary of State? Wasn't that the moment when Margaret Brennan was supposed to say, actually, he does have the full support of the president and the secretary, but you already know that? Right? Where was the smarmy, condescending, bitchy kind of fact check there, Margaret? Margaret, that was your moment. By the way, I think I've already figured out who that person is and what they do. Clearly, that was one of the voices of the Muppets in the Iraqi Sesame Street, right? That's what that person does for USAID. Ooh, Miss Piggy. Oh, actually, I don't think they would have a Miss Piggy in the Iraqi Sesame Street, right? There's kind of a halal problem there. All right, I don't want to get into that. Let's get on to Margaret Brennan and her sad, tragic career. It may have all started or really spiraled into complete out of control oblivion on election night itself. Do you remember how she handled the news that she was going to have to spend the next 4 years covering President Trump?
Any country I have ever covered anywhere in the world, people vote on the 3 feet in front of them and the kitchen table they sit down at every day. And the economic issues are just so fundamental, and the experience of that. And, you know, Nora, you said earlier, maybe we overfocused on grocery prices. I think, you know, Donald Trump campaigns saying he's going to lower the price of bacon. The president of the United States has nothing to do with the price of bacon.
Or eggs, for that matter.
Or eggs, or any of it. But it's promising.
Gas.
I get you're uncomfortable, even though the head of the Federal Reserve and those guys, you don't quite know what they do back in Washington, but they're making your house more expensive because they're hiking up more, you know. You don't get that. You don't get the national number where Joe Biden is telling you, look, inflation is moderating and coming down, but you understand your grocery cart or your gas tank. And that personal experience just seems to be what at least people are using to justify their vote.
How are you justifying your vote? Well, groceries are a lot more expensive. Don't you know what the Fed chairman is doing? I love the sadness and the anger and the frustration over you. Let's just be clear here. The anger is over you voting the way you voted and for the reasons that you voted. And she's still flummoxed by the whole thing. You know, Margaret, if only you had like a weekly platform with a big budget and the ability to actually talk about politics and issues on a regular basis, that would really keep you from being upset. And oh, wait, you do. You're the host of Face the Nation. So maybe you're part of the problem. Also, one other thing, the president doesn't have anything to do with the cost of eggs or groceries. I'll remember that if the prices don't come down, because I'm sure Margaret Brennan will be the first one to say, well, it's not Trump's fault. And secondly, actually, the president does, at least in the last 4 years he did, because he made the cost of energy so expensive from day one, shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, stopping all new leases for oil and gas exploration in this country. The second you allow gas prices to get more expensive and energy prices across the board to be more expensive, which is what Biden did by design on purpose because of his Green New scheme, Well, that brings up the cost of everything, because manufacturing everything costs energy, and transporting those things once you've manufactured it costs energy, and then selling it at a store costs energy, and your ability to go and buy it costs energy. Energy drives the cost of everything. But you already knew that, didn't you, Margaret? Yes, you did. Let's let JD Vance have the last word here, because he's been the perfect foil for Margaret Brennan in this very sad time in her career. And of course, his interview last week became an instant classic meme.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world.
And of course, during that interview, famously, did we not have the "I don't really care" Margaret clip? I thought that's what we had there. Kevin,
I can find it real quick if you'd like.
Isn't that what that was? I thought that's what we had. Yeah, let's find "I don't care." Yeah, it's supposed to be "I don't really care" Margaret. Just wait a second. This will get edited in the final clip. Sometimes the live audience gets to see a little bit of the making of the sausage.
There you go.
It's definitely supposed to be "I don't really care" Margaret. Where is it? Thank you.
Chat.
Stand by. Let's try that again.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted. And many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country. And I think most Americans agree with me.
Yeah. And that was the moment. That was the moment that created the meme that will really haunt Margaret Brennan's career from this point forward, or what's left of it. It's hilarious and also kind of sad. In fact, Margaret Brennan, if you watch, go look at her account on X, the everything app, the social media platform, because every time she tweets anything out, even if it's just a clip from her show, or if it's news related, or even something personal, you know, congratulating a colleague, she gets this in her replies. Just, it's sad and it's hilarious, because that was the moment. That was the moment. And you saw her engaging with JD Vance. This is, I guess she's decided, is her new persona. This is what she has to do, is constantly engage in this sanctimonious, arrogant sort of debate with whoever she's asking. But it's more than that. It's that attitude. It's the attitude of, yeah, but you saw the face that she made. It's kind of a special situation. You know, oh, but you already know that, don't you? And JD Vance has the perfect answer. I think the answer that we all want to give. I don't really care, Margaret. Go seek her out. You should see if anyone has said it yet on her latest tweet. And if not, you can be first. There, I think we cleaned up that mess, didn't we, Kevin? Well done. Thank you for getting me the link. By the way, great time to remind you to buy my book. Isn't it a beautiful book? The artwork is fantastic. And look at the reviews on the back. All right. We've got brand new polling on Trump's first couple of weeks in office, and CNN is super duper 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 sad about it. You see, they've been spending all their time telling you about how dangerous and horrible everything is, and how Elon Musk's attempt to make the government less corrupt and more efficient is actually a constitutional crisis. Think about that for a minute. That's what they're reduced to. They've drawn a line in the sand, and they're going to die on the hill of trying to protect inefficient and corrupt government agencies because no one elected Musk. even though Donald Trump literally said this is what he was going to do if he were elected. Well, over on CNN, the American people once again delivered their opinion of what's going on, and it's very different than what CNN thinks you should be thinking about what's going on.
I think one of the things that's so important for politicians is for folks to believe what they're saying and that they're keeping their campaign promises. So I think this gives you a pretty gosh darn good idea of what may be going on. Trump's doing what he promised to do. You go back to April of 2017, it was just 46% of all Americans who said that Trump was doing what he promised to do. Compare that now to February of 2025. You know, there was a good show that was on during the 1990s called A Different World. That is what's going on right now. We're living in a different world. 70% of Americans say Trump is doing what he promised to do. Again, compare that to April of 2017 when it's just 46%. When Americans are 24 points more likely to say that you're doing what you promised to do, it's no wonder that your net approval rating is much more likely to be on the positive side of the ledger than on the negative side. And so far, what we're seeing again is Americans, 21 days so far versus just 11 days during his entire first term, that Trump has a positive net approval rating. Quite a different world.
Quite a different world. And special kudos there for the Lisa Bonet sitcom of The Cosby Show spinoff. Well done, you, Harry Enton. Can I just say, as we look at this graphic, the 46% in April of 2017 who said that Trump did what he promised to do, the fact that it was less than a majority in the country, I think a big part of that, the 54% who think he didn't do what he promised to do, that was those of us who wanted her. Let me do it again. The 54% there, that's the rest of us who expected him to lock her up. All right. If you asked me in April 2017, has Trump fulfilled his campaign promises? I'd be like, no, because Hillary Clinton is still a free woman. Lock her the up. Thank you very much. So that was worth getting right. Look at those numbers. It's extraordinary. And that is, I mean, every single time anyone laments to be, oh my gosh, I can't believe Trump's doing what he's doing. I'm like, really? Why can't you believe it? Because it's literally what he said he was going to do. I mean, literally. The only thing you can say is that the prices haven't come down yet, but of course that's a bit of a lagging indicator. And you know, everyone's pointing to egg prices. That has more to do with the avian flu and what Biden put into place for eradication of the avian flu than anything that Trump has done. But my God, I mean, of course he's done everything that he said he was going to do. Here's the only caution. Everything that he's done so far as a campaign promise fulfillment has been done via executive order, which is also what he promised to do. But it can all be undone by the next president if the next president does not agree with what Donald Trump has done. Now, that might be a way of ensuring that a Republican wins the next presidential election, because all they've got to do is run on the fact that the opponent is going to undo all the things that Trump did. But I'd much rather have Congress step up here and start legislating some of these things. That would be terrific. Can we get on that, please? I know you're busy. Don't worry about it. 70% of the American people say that he's doing what he promised to do. And by the way, a vast majority of those things that he's doing that he promised to do are pretty popular things. So if the president is doing very popular things, and in addition, they're the popular things that he promised he'd do, so he's delivering for the American people immediately, just like he promised he would during the campaign, well, you put those two factors together, and it's going to come out with a net result of Donald Trump being rather popular right now, which brings us to Margaret Brennan on CBS News Face the Nation. She had to do a whole segment highlighting how popular Donald Trump is. This has got to be like some sort of Chinese water torture for Margaret Brennan. This has got to be like going to the dentist without any Novocaine and getting a full root canal. This had to be the most painful segment Margaret Brennan has ever had to engage in. So let's watch with delight, shall we?
Our CBS poll finds that a majority of Americans, 53%, approve of the job he's doing. That's a better approval number than he ever reached during his first term in the White House. Joining us with more is our Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Good to see you, Anthony. What's driving this?
I will keep it simple, Margaret. He is doing, in the eyes of the public, what he said he would do in the campaign. There's political value in that. In fact, 70% of people say he's doing what he promised. That's whether they approve of him or not. Now, there's another part of this that continues over from the campaign. There were words that he was described as being tough, being energetic, and he still is today in big majority numbers. So as people take a look in these first few weeks, there's been a lot of activity. They're getting that general sense of governance, and that's being reflected in these early numbers.
So that's perception. What about the actual policies?
Well, let's start with the ones that are popular. And again, these echo a lot of what we saw in the campaign. The idea of deporting those in the country illegally continues to be popular. We saw that in the campaign. Sending troops to the U.S.-Mexico border, again, majority in favor. We'd seen that in the campaign. For his supporters in particular, the focus on ending DEI is popular. We had seen in the campaign, a lot of them thought those processes had gone too far.
Oh, you gotta love it. I mean, in other words, and something that we focused on quite a bit, you see the through line here, that in both sets of polls, the president is quite popular in many respects because he's merely delivering on what he promised he would do. He actually got into office with a whole list of things that he told the American people he would do as soon as he took office, and now he's just doing it. For instance, the tariff war with Canada and Mexico, and he was going to force them through the threat of tariffs to increase their personnel at the border. And now both countries have committed to 10,000 new troops or security agents in some respect on the borders to help protect their side of the border, to ensure that fentanyl isn't crossing, or illegal immigrants aren't crossing, or terrorists aren't crossing, because it's their border too. Why should we do all of the work? He threatens tariffs, and he actually delivered the deportation of criminal aliens. First of all, it wasn't that hard to secure the border immediately. He went from something like, thousands and thousands of illegal crossings to like 100 or 2 per day. And he had Tom Homan and ICE go and root out where the criminals were, found them, apprehended them, arrested them, and now they're back home in their countries. He said he was going to do it, got into office, and he used his executive powers to do it. We explored this last week in a segment, and it's worth repeating. We lost the sense of this, but the fact of the matter is, Trump is proving that if you really want to, you can just do things. You don't have to debate it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to wring your hands. You don't have to have committee hearings about it. You don't have to negotiate about it. You say, hey, I think we should do this. And people say, yeah, we should do this. And they say, yeah, we should do this, to the tune of like 80 million people voting for you and saying, please do this. And so you get into office and you say, okay, well, what powers do I have as the executive? Because I know we got a constitution and Congress has to say yes or no on certain things, but other things I can do just as the executive. And you have your legal advisor say, well, here's the things you can do. And then you say, well, those are the things I said that I would do. And your legal advisors say, well, you can do it. And Donald Trump says, well, then let's do it. Let's just do it. And this is a lesson we can take into our lives. I should really exercise more. Okay, you can just do it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to Google it. You don't have to buy yourself a fancy new outfit from Lululemon. Just do things. I wish my house was more organized. Okay, well, you know what? You can just do that. Just do it. I wish I cooked at home more because that's healthier for me. Hey, just do it. President Trump is incredibly popular right now because he's doing the things he said he was going to do. But more than that, and we saw it last night at the Super Bowl, everyone talks about a vibe shift. Vibe shift. What's this vibe shift? Here's the thing. We have a president of the United States who loves this country, not as some tagline at the end of the speech that he mumbles and has mumbled for the last 50 years of his political career. No, he really does love this country. He even, people always make fun of Donald Trump when he talks. He puts out a tweet that says, "Happy Thanksgiving," even to the haters. And it's funny at this point. It's become a meme. He does it all the time. And he makes a laundry list of all the people, even you socialists who want to destroy our country and throw me in jail, even you. But I think there's some truth to this. He loves this country. He even loves the people who hate him. because he really does see himself as their president too. And that's part of the vibe shift that you saw during the Super Bowl yesterday, when we had a very patriotic rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and they showed players who were getting ready for the game without taking a knee and protesting about this country, about how inherently racist we are, and in some way having to apologize for American triumphalism. No, we don't have to apologize for being America anymore. We don't have to apologize for being better. That's very Obama. Leave that in the past. No more apologies. We should thump our chest a little bit about what we've been able to do over the last 250 years on this planet. And when the camera cut to those players who were excited about playing in the game, and they cut to the West Point cadets standing at attention during the national anthem, and then they cut to the President of the United States, the very first sitting president to attend a Super Bowl game, shockingly. And he was not just standing and honoring the Star Spangled Banner, but he was standing at attention and saluting. And you heard what happened in the Super Bowl when you heard this roar of the crowd, excited to see Trump there, but excited to see Trump in a dignified, patriotic way, expressing his love and admiration and respect for this country. And suddenly we all felt it. This guy is not just doing things, but he's also being something. He's representing something. He's being a president. One of the questions in the interview with Bret Baier to Donald Trump, and it's a fair one, was, have you thought about how you can unite our country and bring us together and make us less at each other's throats over our political differences? And he gave the perfect answer. Yeah, I want that. And success will get it there. Our success will unify our nation. Because if we're all doing better and we're all happier and prouder for being Americans, then we're all going to be together in that success and enjoy that success together. And right now, we're on that path. Really sad, though, that CBS and CNN had to communicate to their audience about how popular Donald Trump is and why. Not that sad. Actually, pretty glorious. Stephen Miller is the deputy chief of staff in the White House, and he is becoming probably the most effective, energetic, and frankly, ferocious spokesperson, not just for this administration's policies, but pushing back against this administration's critics. He appeared on Fox News Channel with Maria Bartiromo, and I want to show you some of the highlights because he's really good.
Yes, the USAID was a slush fund, first of all, for left-wing projects around the globe, like gender surgeries around the world, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, crazy Green New Deal climate scams, and every other lunatic left-wing project that is bankrupting this country. But even beyond that, it was funding an army of left-wing activists, these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, NGOs. They get billions and billions of dollars, and they use that money to then infiltrate corporate America, to then infiltrate the public sector, to then resettle, for example, at taxpayer expense, millions of illegal aliens into this country, to drive racist equity policies, to drive radical left gender policies. And so what we've learned is that the left's, this mammoth left-wing power structure, plus left-wing media, wasn't organic. It wasn't created naturally. It was funded by taxpayer dollars. And that is why they are screaming and screeching so loud now, is because President Trump is cutting off the slush fund to the organizations that hate and hurt America.
That is exactly why they're screaming in the streets. That's why Democrats have decided that this cannot stand. That's why they want to make sure that Elon Musk and Donald Trump and anyone else in this administration can't see what they've been doing outside of the confines of any sort of normal oversight and approval. You think Congress approves things like paying for transgender surgeries in foreign countries? Of course not. No congressman would ever want their name on that. But instead, they just write this blank check to USAID saying, yeah, you're going to have this budget so that you can do things to advance American ideals and democracy in foreign countries. And then you put somebody in charge over there like Samantha Power, who decides, oh, well, paying for these transgender procedures will advance American ideals because, well, listen, I agree with that. And that's what ends up happening. And then you get these Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, anti-racism programs all around the country, all around the world, that actually sets up America as some sort of racist country. And we're paying for those programs. We're paying for anti-American programs all under the guise of advancing American ideas around the world. And they're upset that we're exposing it now, that the Trump administration is exposing it. Stephen Miller is absolutely right. And he was just getting started.
A radical left judge said that the Secretary of the Treasury cannot access the Treasury computer system. This isn't just unconstitutional. That ruling is an assault on the very idea of democracy itself. What we continue to see here is the idea that rogue bureaucrats who are elected by no one, who answer to no one, who have lifetime tenure jobs, who we would be told can never be fired, which of course is not true, that the power has been cemented and accumulated for years, whether it be with the Treasury bureaucrats or the FBI bureaucrats, or the CIA bureaucrats, or the USAID bureaucrats, with this unelected shadow force that is running our government and running our country. Donald Trump is engaging in the most important restoration of democracy in over a century by saying that we are going to restore power to the people through their elected president and his appointed officers. That is the only way we can have true democracy in this country. You elect a president, he appoints a staff, the staff transparently carries out his orders on behalf of the whole nation. But this nonsense where we have rogue, unelected, unaccountable, and previously unfireable bureaucrats who do whatever the hell they want with no one telling them and no one controlling them, we're not going to let that happen anymore. We're going to have a democracy, and we're going to have an executive branch that serves the American people, that answers to the American people, and that answers the will of the American voter.
God, Stephen Miller is so good at this. He should put a band together. He could call it this. No, that's too easy. Listen, I know what a lot of you are thinking right now, though. Why does he keep saying it's a democracy? Why is he saying that he has to do this in our democracy and we're going to save our democracy and we're going to preserve our democracy? It's not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. I get it. I get it. Stephen Miller knows that. I promise you. I promise you. We're a constitutional republic, but we use the democratic process to elect our representatives, right? In shorthand, you can say it's a democracy, but it's not actually a democracy. But Stephen Miller knows that. I promise you. Do you know why he keeps saying that? Do you know why he said it multiple times there about how these unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who were spending taxpayer dollars on things that taxpayers don't agree with, and even members of the legislative branch don't agree with, and now they're pretending like they can do it without your oversight, they can do it without being fired, they can do it without even having to answer any questions, that it was contrary to our democracy. Do you know why he kept saying democracy, democracy, democracy? Because he's tweaking Democrats. He's tweaking the left because that's their language. He's adopting their language just to twist the knife that much further. You guys keep saying that you're a democracy. You keep saying that what Trump's doing is a threat to the democracy. Explain to me how what's going on here meshes with your understanding of what a democracy is supposed to be. Who are the real authoritarians here? Who are the real oligarchs here? They want to protect this pristine chosen few who get to sit in their towers and decide how our money, millions and millions and tens of millions and billions of our money, our tax dollars, how it gets spent around the world to undermine our very nation's interests. And ironically, absurdly, they do it through an agency that they tell us is meant to project American interests around the world. And the very programs that it funds actually undermines who we are around the world. And if we dare question it or put an end to it, we're the ones who are contrary to our nation's ideals. I thought you guys wanted a democracy. That's why he keeps saying it, and it's glorious. On Friday, he appeared on Fox News, Martha McCallum, again, to talk about the subject of the week, Elon Musk and Doge.
After this expires at midnight on Monday, this offer for 8 months of paid vacation at the end of this term, will it go to layoffs if people refuse to come back to the office? What comes next?
Well, of course, if people refuse to come back to the office, they're going to be laid off. I mean, why would federal taxpayers be subsidizing Netflix watching at home for so-called federal workers? In other words, how can you call yourself a federal worker if you never show up at the office? We have these giant cavernous office buildings in Washington, D.C., carved out of marble, stone, and granite in the Greek classical style, some of the most gorgeous buildings on earth. The taxpayers fund it, they pay for, they upkeep, they provide electricity to, and no one's showing up. And what are they doing at home? Watching their favorite streaming shows? It's crazy. Of course they have to get back into the office because they work for everyone watching me today
Well, they've had a
and
very
watching
good
you today.
gigs.
Actually quite brilliant. What, so they can stay home and watch Netflix? And you know that a lot of people who work from home do that. Let me just button this up here, at least on that topic. Stephen Miller's great, and I hope you liked him. We're going to see a lot more of him. He's terrific at what he does. And he's a bit of a savant, by the way, in every possible way. He has amazing facts and figures at his fingertips, all sitting up there in his gray matter. And he knows his stuff. But let me just say, with regard to this issue specifically, on how today, February 10th, was the day that the federal workforce had to come back, stop working from home, and actually come back into the office. I'm sure you know by now that I do a morning radio show here in Washington, D.C., on DC's #1 talk radio station, WMAL, all morning long on my show. You know, we give our traffic reports. It was insane. It was insane, especially down in Northeast D.C. At the Navy Yard, where a lot of federal workers and contractors come into work, but also that filters into a lot of the office buildings down there that work for the government and work for contractors and work for the feds. That's how people come in from Virginia, is that they come in through, did I say Northwest? I meant Southeast DC. Excuse me. And then they come in to work in all of those federal buildings that have been standing empty, as Stephen Miller said. It was insane. Probably upwards to 10,000 cars on the roads in Washington, D.C. that had not been here last week. Everybody got the message. Everybody got the message loud and clear. And sadly, I was kind of hoping they'd stay home because then they'd have a reason to be laid off. But apparently, people like their cushy federal jobs. It's not quite as cushy as it was now that they have to come in. And the good news is, for my radio show, the longer the traffic is for people to get in, the longer they listen to my show, which is better for my rating. So win-win for everybody across the board. Did I mention my book? Did you watch the Super Bowl last night? Neither did I. Honestly, I could not care less about those two teams. I loathe both teams and their fan bases. Sorry. But congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles fans for their... Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to use a multi-syllabic word for an Eagles fan. I meant good job, Eagles fans. There. Congratulations. Way too many syllables for an Eagles fan to understand. But you won. Good. I'm happy. Taylor Swift is sad. Let's get that behind us now. Let's focus on the best part of the Super Bowl, the ads. And I don't know if you noticed something, but suddenly it's cool to be American again. It's cool to be patriotic again. And when Madison Avenue and the ad agencies for major product services and corporations in this country get that message, you know that it's real. And that's what we saw. Take a look.
God bless America.
That's pretty awesome. And it was stuff like that that was all part of the Super Bowl presentation that got people kind of choked up, and rightly so. That, of course, was a presentation specifically for the Super Bowl. But then the ads started, and they picked up right where the presentation left off.
Longest thing we ever do is live our lives. But life doesn't come with an owner's manual. Might have been nice, huh? But that means we get to write our own stories. Freedom is yes or no or maybe. Freedom is for everybody, but it isn't free. It's earned. There are real heroes in the world, but not the ones in the movies. Real heroes are humble. They're not driven by pride. Pride is a terrible driver. Freedom is the roar of one man's engine and the silence of another's. Freedom is the ability to inspire. The most sacred thing in life isn't the path. It's the freedom to choose it. You don't have to be friends with someone to wave at them. We won't always agree on which way to go. But our differences can be our strength. So choose, but choose wisely. Choose what makes you happy. My friends, my family, my work make me happy. This Jeep makes me happy, even though my name is. That's my owner's manual. Get out there, write your own.
All right, a couple things about what I like that. First of all, you heard, just so you know, he didn't say our diversity is our strength. He said our differences are our strength. Okay, so he didn't use a wokey little diversity word there. And I'm fine with Jeep selling their electric vehicles alongside their Hemis, right? Because if you want an electric vehicle, go for it. If you don't, that's fine too. We got that for you. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's me, but I think that ad actually sold some Jeeps, which is the whole point, isn't it? And it didn't get in your face about whatever it is they were trying to sell you, other than, hey, we're a great country and we got great people and we got heroes. And you want to be a hero? Well, guess what? Jeep was part of winning World War II. So maybe you should get a Jeep. I mean, I have a Jeep. I love my Jeep. I mean, the electrical system in it's been broken for about a year. I should probably get it fixed. It won't start, keeps draining the battery. I don't know why, but it's a beautiful paperweight in my driveway right now, a very big one. I'll get it fixed. That ad has inspired me to get my Jeep fixed for the 5th time in 2 years. I'm sure it was just a bad year for those Jeeps, 2015. Anyway, Jeep, great car. All right. There's some more. How about a pro-life ad during the Super Bowl? After me. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that a pro-life ad? That's not a pro-life ad. That's just about nonprofit organizations and NFL spending money. No, the message. The message. You cannot be pro-life and not embrace that message. You cannot actually recognize the value of every single human child without embracing that. And ultimately, if you do embrace the message that you just saw in that ad, well, you're just a small hop, skip, and a jump, or maybe even a baby step into valuing every single life, because every life is somebody. You show that ad to a pro-abortion friend of yours and then have that conversation and see where it might go. This one was a little bit more blatant in their love of our God and our lives.
Let's get you home. Almost heaven. West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze.
Yeah, I can't wait to get there.
Country roads take me home to the place I belong. Mount Mama, take me home. Country road, take me home. Country roads.
Makes you want to get a mortgage, doesn't it? Worked for me. I might have to move to West Virginia. All right. You know how different this Super Bowl was from other years, recent years? Even Bud Light dropped the whole transgender thing and decided to get back to its roots. Now, It still hasn't gotten me to buy a Bud Light. It still hasn't gotten me to forgive them, because guess what? They haven't asked for my forgiveness. I might get a Bud Light again someday if their CEO or anyone from their organization actually apologizes and acknowledges what they did wrong, but they refuse to. They're too arrogant for that. But this is a step in the right direction, I suppose.
You want to go fishing tomorrow? I got a colonoscopy tomorrow.
Fellas, I accidentally threw a lame party.
Okay, Ted.
They're on their way.
They're here.
Ooh.
You call this a party? Cul-de-sac party. Launch. Launch. These beers are a metaphor for an invitation.
Is that our leaf blower?
Party in the sack.
You are cordially invited to the end of the cul-de-sac.
This is incredible.
Your mower smokes meat?
Oh, a smoker cuts grass.
Hell yeah.
I spent most of my money on this. New rig, fully custom. How many Bud Lights can you fit in that puppy? As many Bud Lights as it takes. It's a lot of Bud Lights. This cul-de-sac's popping. Bill, get off the boat. The HOA's already breathing down my neck.
All right. Extra points for using Huey Lewis on the News and 80s music. 100% scores with that. And points for showing dorky suburban dads just being fun and cool and dorky and not being idiots. Not used to that in ads. In general, step in the right direction. I still don't forgive them, though. And then finally, who put this list of ads together, Kevin? Our entire production team put together these ads.
America's deadliest epidemic.
This is America.
All right, sorry. Let me start that again. Including this ad, but I see from the caption here, this is for Hims. Isn't Hims like? Well, don't they sell drugs? Isn't that what they do? That they sell drugs to help you get a. So I'm a little nervous about what this ad might do, but let's take a look at it.
Obesity is America's deadliest epidemic.
This is America.
74% of us are overweight, and obesity leads to 500,000 deaths each year.
Why, you just have to stop eating, Jimmy.
This is America.
Something's broken. It's not our bodies. It's the system. Welcome to Weight Loss in America.
Like and subscribe.
A $160 billion industry that feeds on our failure.
Yeah.
There are medications that work, but the price for profits, not patience.
This is America.
This system wasn't built to help us. It was built to keep us sick and stuck. Not anymore. Hims and Hers offers life-changing weight loss medications. They're affordable, doctor-trusted, and formulated in the USA. You get a treatment plan designed by a doctor to fit your body, goals, and lifestyle. You deserve to feel great in your body. This is the future of healthcare. This is Hims and Hers. Join us in the fight for a healthier America.
Okay. A couple things. First of all, the way this ad started, I thought maybe it was written and produced by RFK Jr., right? This was very Maha. And then suddenly it is like the system is designed to keep you sick and keep you unhealthy and keep you obese. It's a screwed up system. We got to get back to basics, back to natural, back to this drug, right? That's where it started to lose me. It's like, all right, fine, though. I understand. Listen, some people do need help losing weight, and a lot of people swear by these. I'm not saying one way or the other. If it works for you, great. Not for me to judge. However, just a little advice. What do I know? I don't make a 6-figure income writing and producing ads. I don't work in an ad agency. I'm just giving you, as a consumer, as the receiver of your message, if you're selling me a weight loss product of any sort, whether it's a diet plan or a pharmaceutical or exercise Peloton, whatever it is, if you're selling me the idea that if I get your product, I will lose this weight and no longer be fat, you might want to maybe end the ad with the after result. That it's amazing. It goes back many, many decades. I remember seeing the ads in magazines and stuff where it would show, for weight loss, it would show before and after. Here's me really fat, and here's what I look like now. because I used this product, right? That's how you do it. But instead, the final image of the ad is still the before. Unless these people were morbidly obese, right? Like they were like, no offense, they're beautiful people. I love you. And I'm not making I'm hardly the picture of health and fitness right now. But it seems to me, if you're trying to sell me on the idea that this product from Hims and Hers is going to help me lose the weight, just one person on screen showing me the after, showing me look how I look now, might have gone a little further in selling the product. But who am I? Who am I to judge? I'm sure that was worth $7 million for a 1-minute ad or something. Anyway, good stuff. Good stuff. Nice job with the Super Bowl ads. All right, that's it. Except it's a great time for me to show you my book. It's beautiful, isn't it? Look at that great book. And if you go to the acknowledgments right here, you can see how I acknowledged and thanked Kevin, my producer of this program right here.
Woo.
You haven't even seen these yet, have you, Kevin?
No, sir. I'm waiting.
The book was released 2 weeks ago, and I've been out of town for 2 weeks. So I just got a hold of my book. You all have gotten my book before I got my book. How about that? How about them apples? But you can get it now. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook, narrated by the author. All right. Thank you for watching today. We have a hell of a lot of super chats flying in. I saw them all flying by today. So let's get to it. Angela, for a $2 super chat. Congrats, Philly. What a whooping. That was a whooping. A whooping. Fly, Eagles, fly. I don't know if I can go with the hashtag Fly, Eagles, fly, but you spent $2 on it, so I'll give it to you. Have you ever met an Eagles fan? Kevin, our office, the town hall offices there in Rosslyn, Virginia, it's full of Eagles fans, isn't it? Like the worst kind of insufferable Eagles fans.
There are Eagles fans who are employed here.
Did they show up today?
They are absent.
Yeah, because they're all waking up with their face in a puddle of their own vomit. Not because they were celebrating the Super Bowl. It's just because they're Eagles fans. This is who they are. Sorry. I'm going to get in trouble for that, I think. Angela, another $5 super chat. Haven't seen Where's Waldo since the great inauguration. Did they run out of peroxide or see President Trump's shadow and crawl back in their hole? Who's the Where's Waldo reference?
It's got to be a reference to the first segment. I'm not sure what, but it's Joe or Mika.
Oh, I think it's Joe. Joe has Where's Waldo hair. And it's true. We haven't done Joe and Mika in a while. They have kind of sent it credit. No, that is 100% a reference to Joe Scarborough. He's got Where's Waldo hair. Absolutely. Yeah, I know. It's not for lack of trying. They just haven't been funny. They were funny today because they're so bad, Angela. That's why we decided to bring Joe in. €6 from Susan Shellett from the Netherlands. We've been wondering what country. I'm going to be in the Netherlands. I'm going to Rotterdam and Amsterdam. Did we mention this last time? She already reveal she was in the Netherlands? Anyway, I'm going there this fall or this September. Kag, one of our ex-ministers, is married to a Palestinian and works for UNRWA. Well, listen, not everyone at UNRWA is a terrorist, but odds are they may be a terrorist. And I'm sorry that American tax dollars have gone to fund that organization. Another €6 from Susan Shellett. And another thing, if you do your job, you're not afraid of losing it. Thank you. But that's this person sitting in the shadows with anonymity. I'm just terrified. I'm terrified. It's funny. I'm not terrified. I made a joke about anyone in the corporate world is going to have to be accountable for the work they do. I'm not terrified of losing my job because I know I bring 100% every day and I know I deliver for the company. But if I didn't, if I were sitting around, on my ass all day and I wasn't working my ass off and I couldn't show results from the work I do, I would rightly be concerned about people looking over my shoulder, like the 13,700 employees at USAID who are going to be getting their pink slip. Thank you, Susan. Well said. Not bad for a European. That Dutch one. I like the Dutch. Angela, $2 super chat. Isn't CBS News being sued for the Kaplan interview? They're being sued for Kamala. Yeah, Trump is suing. I think he's brought the damages down to $10 billion now after seeing the full release of the 60 Minutes interview with Kaplan Kamala. Take a look. We ran that segment on Thursday last week on the Larry Show. Ooh, what's going on with my IFB here? A PMN for $5 super chat. Hey, Larry, we love your show. We can always trust you and your perspective. God bless. Thank you, brother or sister. I appreciate that very much. I love this show too. We love doing it. Thank you. Richard Murray for a $10 super chat. The founded by immigrants line is a lie. Most founders and patriot rebels were native-born Americans by several generations. How else could they require the president to be a natural-born citizen? I know it's such a trite statement. We were founded by immigrants. We were founded by immigrants. Well, not in any essence of what an immigrant actually meant. It's funny. They always say we were founded by immigrants. We were founded by immigrants. And then at the same time, if you go see Hamilton on Broadway, they make a big deal about how Alexander Hamilton was born down in Nevis, an island off of St. Thomas, and he's different in compared to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and these other guys because they look down on him because he's an immigrant. So you can't have it both ways. Either we were founded by immigrants and George Washington and James Madison were all immigrants too, or Alexander Hamilton was the outlier, although he wasn't an immigrant either, because we didn't look at people at that time as an immigrant per se. It's lazy and it's trite, and it's just it's pablum. It's a little talking point that people like to throw out there to try to stifle conversation. That's why JD Vance is so strong, because he pushed back on it immediately from Margaret Brennan. Good point, Richard, and I appreciate it. Jason, with a cool logo, by the way, looks like a comic book hero. A $2 super chat. Hey, Larry, amazing show as always. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it, brother. Angela, again, with a $2 super chat. Love our angel, Angela. Thoughts on Mad Max and the Band of Clowns at DOE? Department of Education? What's Mad Max?
Maxine and the Democrats doing their little rallies.
David and screamed at the guy. Oh, you know what? If it weren't an old video from Friday, we probably would have done that too. But my God, what a moment that was! That guy. How many memes do we have now, Kevin? Of just the last few months of dudes that are just trying to keep their together while they're getting screamed at by crazy leftists like that poor guy whose job was to keep, the Department of Education somewhat secure while these insane lunatic congressmen were trying to storm. And by the way, just so you know, this whole constitutional crisis thing and subverting the Constitution that they always like to say, members of the legislative branch do not have carte blanche into any agency in this country. They can't just walk in and say, I'm a congressman, let me in. That's not how things work. And that's certainly not how it works here in Washington, D.C. If those members of Congress want to get into the Department of Education and oversee something, which, by the way, where the hell have you been? Do you think any of them wanted to get into the Department of Education and see what was going on in that building for the last 4 years, or for the last 40 years, for that matter? They never go down there. They only went down there because they were afraid Elon Musk and the Doge people are going to find something. But if they want to do it, they set up an appointment. If they're on the committee that oversees the Department of Education, they have every right to go in there by appointment with a scheduled meeting. But you just come storm in there as a mob and say, let us in. That security guard was fantastic. And those are my thoughts on that scene, Angela. Thank you for that. $2 super chat. For the record, we are Eagles fans. Oh, I'm so sorry, Angela. Then I'll speak slower next time for you. I'm sorry. Come on. It's easy to make fun of Eagles fans. And a $10 super chat from NYC Moto Rider. Hi, Larry and Kevin. With all the stolen money discovered by Doge, all Americans should receive a non-taxable $50,000 to $100,000 refund. What do you think? I think that would be fantastic. But sadly, we're $38 trillion in debt, so maybe we got to pay that down first. But we'll get there. We will eventually get there. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Look at my books up there now next to Andrew Breitbart. How great is that? That makes me so happy. And by the way, dedication of my book. So it's pretty cool that it's right up there next to him. Makes me happy. Thanks for watching. We're back home in our studios in DC, and we couldn't be happier. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, my name is Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.